There we go. All right. So welcome to today's topic. We're going to be covering how to prepare and apply for graduate school. I'm going to go ahead and oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Give me one moment. Here we go. This is what I wanted. Here we go. Okay. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Perfect. All right. So as I said, welcome so much. Today we're going to be covering how to prepare and apply for graduate school. As always, thank you so much for joining. We're going to be recording so that way students can go back and refer to this as needed. And then you can keep your microphone on mute. If you have any questions though, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can ask in the comment box. So I'm Kari Campbell. I'm a second-year Master's in Counseling Psychology student, and then I am also the second-year graduate assistant for the psych program. Today, we're going to be covering a whole bunch of things. So we're going to go over how to approach grad school and ways to kind of figure out where to even begin with it, because it's a lot. Some of the research that is kind of important to take into consideration, people that you can reach out to, how to go about asking for letters of recommendation, identifying resources, kind of how to apply, and then also an overview of essays and personal statement tips. So first, where to begin? So grad school is an entity in and of itself. So one of the biggest questions to ask when you're thinking about, do I want to go to grad school, is why are you wanting to pursue a graduate degree? So a lot of the times people might say, you know, I want to be a professor one day. And more times than not, to be able to teach at a institution, you need to have a higher graduate degree. So that includes like your master's or a doctoral degree. So really asking yourself, like, why do I want to go to grad school? Or maybe it's, you know, I want to learn more about the world of sports psych or something, or I want to work with something that's specific to the population I want to work with, or a certain diagnosis. So really asking yourself, like, why are you wanting to go to grad school is a great starting point, because it allows you to reflect on not only like what you want to do in the future, but what your experiences have been so far that have led you to say, like, yeah, I want to keep going. Because it's a big dedication, you know, to continue on into school, and really take that step to say, like, okay, I'm going to continue on for 2 years or 3 years, depending on your program. So that's a great starting point to kind of, you know, write on a piece of paper, circle, and jot some notes down. And then as far as a timeline goes, what has been helpful for me, and this is purely just, you know, taking into consideration deadlines of programs and things along those lines. So usually the summer before the fall semester that you graduate. So say you graduate in 2021 and you are looking to apply for fall of 2021, a good time to start looking for grad programs would be that summer before. And then because deadlines are usually about mid-December, January-ish. And that's not all of them. Some of them have rolling deadlines, which means that you can submit your application whenever. But for the most part, most programs have a deadline that you need to go by. So usually starting with the summer before to kind of get an idea of like where you want to go, maybe what program you want to pursue, is helpful. And then that fall semester, it kind of you go in saying like, okay, this is where I'm looking at going. These are the deadlines. I can work throughout the fall semester of getting my essay done, my application filled out. So it really gives you ample amount of time to work through those steps without overwhelming yourself. And then identifying the kind of graduate program you want to pursue. So there's a bunch of different kinds. So you have the master's level, doctoral level, and within the master's, you have like a master's of science or a master of arts. And sometimes with those, you'll notice that A program might be more research-based rather than application. And when I say application-based, I mean like very hands-on experience. So a lot of field work. So take that into consideration too. Like, do you want to do more of a research-based program, or are you looking more towards being hands-on and being in the field and getting that hands-on experience? And then looking at concentrations or focuses as well. So Robert Morris, they have a master's of counseling psychology. So that's like a specific concentration that you might be interested in. But there's a whole bunch of them, and you can see there they're listed at the bottom. So there's like clinical, there's counseling, social work, sports science. Really, there's a whole realm of different concentrations that you could get your master's in. So those are just a few of the starting points that kind of get you in that process of like, okay, this might be something I want to do. This might be where I want to go. And like I said, they're just good starting points to go from, because then you can start branching off. Because where you might think like initially, yeah, this is where I want to go. As you get into the program a little bit more and doing your research on it, you might notice like, okay, maybe I don't want to go here. So like I said, those are 4 points to really start with, and then you can branch off from there. So this is just a very broad and basic overview of kind of what I was saying. So you're identifying where you want to go. So this is example, Boston, Denver, Ithaca, RMU. And then you identify the program, and you can see that's listed in the bullet points. And then also the deadline of the application. So these are this is a very basic like overview, which is a great starting point, because it's like, okay, identified, like I said, where you want to go, when the application's due, and kind of what program you're looking at. So this is a great starting point. And then that's a great starting point, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So the research aspect of it, which is, it can be fun, but overwhelming. And as you can see listed on this slide are a few of the bullet points that kind of important to take into consideration. So you have university name, a program name, program concentration or specificity, how long your program is, how many hours of field experience or like practicum or internship experience that you need, the cost, and within the cost you have in-state, out-of-state, and then the overall cost of the program. Looking at what assistantships are available or financial aid options, GRE or other tests that are required. The GRE is basically like the SATs to get into undergrad, but the SATs to get into grad school. Letters of recommendation, and then how many you need and how to submit them. Application deadlines, the transcripts, application fee, if transfer credits are accepted, and then additional information. So that looks at like a curriculum vitae, which is like an academic resume. So it lists like relevant courses that you might have had, internship experience, and things along those lines that highlight your academic presence. And then resume and essays. So this is a lot of information to throw at you. So I'm going to share another screen, and it shows kind of how I have approached this past semester. I was looking at doctoral programs. So this is an example of how I went about organizing that information, because like I said, that's a lot of information to have to go through and identify. So as you can see here, and I'm going to minimize it a little bit so we can kind of get everything in there. Can you still see it okay? Okay. So as you can see, it has the name of the institute over here. And then for me, I like the organization. So for me, I went through and I identified like my top choice, my second choice, and my last choice. And I color coordinated those. So like I said, this is a great way to organize all of that information, because it's so much. And as you can see, it has like the program name, the program that I want to pursue, or the programs that they have available, how long the programs are, how many credits that is, and the credits kind of coincide with the program length. So if the 100-hour 20-degree equates to 5 years. So taking that into consideration, and then the field experience or residency, in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, and then the overall program cost. Move over a little bit. There we go. And then assistantships available. And sometimes that might be something that you have to find out directly from the program coordinator or graduate admissions, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. Getting an idea of what's available, if they require the GRE. And for most like psychology-based programs that you apply for, the GRE is a recommendation. It's not always required. But more times than not, you'll come across programs that require you to have the GRE. And then for me, I kind of looked at also like the scores that are recommended to get on the GRE. So it kind of gives me an idea going in like, okay, this is what I need to get in order to be in average range of their applicants. And then going on to letters of recommendation. So how many you need, application deadline, transcripts, the application fee, if a CV is required or a resume, like sample academic papers required. Sometimes they'll have you submit additional papers to like rather than just your personal statement or your essay that they require. So that's something to kind of keep in consideration too. Like, do they require a sample paper or something other than just my essay? And then, like I said, the personal statement or essay. And a lot of the times on the program web pages, you'll see the prompt that they offer. Or once you start your application, most of the times you'll see like a bar on the side that says like personal information, or it goes through all of the requirements of an essay or application. And if you click the essay or personal statement box, most of the times it'll take you to the essay prompt they want you to answer. So as you can see, that's what I did. I copy and pasted it over so I had it. And then transfer credits accepted. So sometimes it looks at like the program that you are graduating from in your undergraduate or in your master's degree, like if you're continuing on. It looks at like how many credits might be applicable to your graduate degree that you're applying for. So that's something to just keep in mind. Like, you know, if you can get 3 credits transferred over, that's wonderful. So keeping that in the back of your mind when you're applying, like, can I transfer credits? And if so, what do I need to do to have that happen? It's just something that's kind of helpful in the long term for things. And like I said, something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. So like I said, it's just like a spreadsheet is a really great way to organize all of the thoughts that are going on and all of the information. Because as you can see, there's a lot that goes into it. So being able to see those numbers and like the certain program specificities that they have or concentrations, it kind of takes away that unknown aspect of it and says like, okay, this is what I'm working with. Let's go from there. So that's something that's kind of helpful to do when looking at continuing on and going to grad school. And then I mentioned like graduate admissions. So with all that information that we just talked about, reaching out to the school that you're looking at is so helpful. So a great starting point is graduate admissions. They know really the cost. They know what all is required for the applications. And then they're also just a great person to reach out to and say, hi, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. Like, this is the program I'm looking at. Can you tell me a little more about it? And it's a great, like I said, it's a great starting point because they really do know the ins and the outs of the program. And more times than not, they want to talk to you about it because it's like, and if it's something you're passionate about, it's like that gets conveyed. And then from that graduate admissions talk, they might send you to the head of the program you're interested in. So let's say we're going to stick with the RMU counseling program for our example today. So say you're a student and you want to reach out to the RMU Masters in Counseling Psych program. So the head of our program is Dr. Pandit. So maybe you reach out to her and say, hi, this is who I am. I'm interested in the program. Would you be willing to tell me a little more about it? And something that I've noticed is like, if you make that initial contact and reach out and say like, hey, this is who I am, when they're going through applications and stuff, and this is just like my personal experience too, like when they're going through those applications, it's like, oh, Molly reached out to me a while ago. Like it helps them, you create that bridge for down the road when it's like, taking applicants almost. And it's just a great way to practice outreaching and networking and really putting yourself out there. And then in addition to not only the head of the program, but also professors in the program with an area of interest. So say you're looking at a program and your interest is in neuropsych, right? Most of the times they have professors listed on the program website, and they list the concentrations of interest for them. So say you come across the professor that has the interest in neuropsych, reach out to them and say, hi, I see you're interested in what I'm interested in. Can we talk? It really is like the beginning stages is a big conversation with a lot of people, because the more you can get to know about a program, the more comfortable you might feel if you do get accepted or if you do get an offer. Being able to know the ins and the outs of the program is really helpful. And kind of like I said earlier, it can alleviate some of that like overwhelmed feeling that some people get when looking at grad schools and continuing on. And then also current students of the program you're interested in. So this is something that I've noticed an increase in, is a lot of students and schools and programs in general are doing webinars with current students. So they'll have a current student panel where prospective students can come in and say like, oh, I have a question about living situations, or I have a question about or your field experience. So it's a great source to like make that other connection besides just professors or like admissions and things that are more relatable because it's another student. So that's a great way to also gauge the program that you're wanting to apply to and getting a better feel for it. And like I mentioned below, join webinars or virtual tours or open houses. Especially with COVID, everything's transferred to online. So beforehand, you could go to a campus and get a feel for it. But now it's like you can go on a campus tour from the comfort of your own home. So you're still able to get that feel for it, just in a different way. And another thing I've noticed that like schools have been doing are financial aid presentations or webinars. So financials are a big component of continuing to grad school, right? So going to the financial aid presentations that they have, it's a really great way to get a general idea of, okay, this is what I'm going to be looking at for financial aid, or this is what they have available for financial aid. And you can see another point on there is assistantships and work studies available. So they touch on that too with financial aid presentations or webinars. So it's just something to kind of like keep in the back of your mind if you really like, if you really want to go to RMU's program, maybe following them on Facebook or keeping an eye out on LinkedIn if they're having any admissions events or if they're having any student panels. So kind of keeping an eye out of, especially now with COVID and everything, what resources are available virtually for you as a prospective student. So those are kind of just great ways to begin that process of reaching out to programs and really getting an idea of maybe this is where I want to go. Okay, and then I had mentioned letters of recommendation. So a little later on, we'll talk about the components of an application that you'll have to look for. And letters of recommendation is a big one. So more times than not, you'll be required to submit or request 3 letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation are great ways for the potential program to get an idea of who you are as a student, but then also sometimes who you are as a person. So a great starting point is, identifying professors you would like to have be your recommenders. More times than not, they want you to have an academic letter of recommendation because, it makes sense. You're applying to continue education. And they want to know if you'll be able to like meet that academic standard. So identify professors that you want to be your recommenders or that you have a really good relationship with. Because not only do they know you as a student, but if you have a strong relationship with them, they know you more as a person too. So it's really 2 points that they can hit on. So identifying professors that you would like to have be your recommenders and that you feel would be a good fit with that. And when you're creating that initial point of contact, explain to them why you're reaching out. Like, Dr. So-and-so, I'm looking to apply to grad school, and I would really love if you would be willing to be a recommender for me. And something that I found has been helpful is when you are making that initial point of contact and asking, including the university or college name and the programs that you're interested in. And something else that's kind of helpful with that is sometimes the programs will have a web link. So maybe attaching that in and saying, if you want to check out the program a little bit more, here's the web link. Because then it shows that you've done your research as the student, but also they might catch something that you didn't, or they might have a question that they want to talk about with you a little bit more. And then within that as well is, providing the application deadline. So if you have a application that's due December 31st, letting them know that, hey, this is the deadline. If you'd be able to complete it before that, I'd be so appreciative. And that leads us into the next point of providing them with ample amount of time. Sending them an email the week before, hey, I need a letter of recommendation. It can be a lot, and more times than not, professors they want to take their time with it, and they want to make sure it's a solid letter for you. So providing them with an ample amount of time. So say that deadline is December 31st, maybe asking them in August or September to kind of get it out there and say, hey, I would love for you to be a recommender. This is the deadline. I wanted to reach out sooner rather than later. And that also, like we talked earlier, it gives you that whole semester to kind of get everything else that you need before you have to submit those components. And then another part, sometimes the program you're applying to will ask you, or it'll tell you how to send in the letters of recommendation. And I've noticed that a lot more. They will ask you to submit the recommender's email address. So say someone wanted to use me as a recommender. They would say Kari Campbell, and then they would enter in the email address. And then whenever you press submit or say this is who I want to be my recommender, it'll send an email to that person and give instructions on how to submit that letter of recommendation. But some places still request a physical letter. So if they do request that physical letter, they'll provide a mail address and where to send that. So you can provide that to your recommender as well. And then offering to meet to go over any questions that they might have, or going over your CV to get a better idea of maybe what volunteer you've done on campus or what extracurricular activities you're involved in. It's a really great way, while they know you as a student, and sometimes they might know you outside of academics as well. It's nice to have that because it really does capture you as a whole, rather than just I'm just a student. It allows them to kind of get a feel for both aspects. And then going into essay and personal statements. So I know we touched on those earlier. So the essay and the personal statement when applying to grad school really looks at a bunch of different things. So certain programs might have specific prompts they want you to look at. So it might be explain to us a time that you experienced conflict and you had to resolve it. What did you do? What did you feel you were strong in? What do you feel that you could have done better in? So each program really does have their own prompt that they go with. But in general, some of the points that I've noticed a lot of programs ask about are like, what have you accomplished? And what are tasks that you've set out to do that you have accomplished, and how did you accomplish those? And also sometimes they'll ask you like, what's been a point of adversity in your life, and how did you overcome those? What did you learn from that? And then sometimes if something was a group project or a group involvement, what role did you play? Were you the leader? Were you someone who made sure everybody got along? Like, what role did you play, and how do you feel you contributed, or what would you have liked to have done differently? And another big part is they always want to know about your strengths and your areas of growth. And I focus on areas of growth rather than weaknesses, because it's like life is a continuous experience, right? So there's always things that we can grow in and we can work on developing more. And that's just my personal take on it. But it's like it's a more positive look on it. Like, yeah, I have these strengths, but also these are areas that I can grow in. So they also want to know those. Why are you wanting to pursue this field? And while you might like want to help people, and that is a wonderful, wonderful reason to come into the field, sometimes they want a little more than that. So maybe you want to come into the field of sports because you've been a lifelong athlete and you understand that importance of, like mental health and everything along those lines. So like maybe focusing, and this is where you can kind of like highlight your personality and who you are as a person too. So within that aspect, you can kind of touch on your own personal life experiences, like this happened to me, and from that I learned that I want to work with athletes or something along those lines. So that point kind of ties to the last bullet point as well. It's like it really allows them to see who you are. And then the next point kind of goes back to the strengths and areas of growth. Like, what can you bring or offer to the program? So this ties to the second point or last bullet point as well. But like, if somebody, if one of your values is dedication or motivation, you can highlight that and be like, growing up, I was really dedicated, and that's one of my values. And I think that's something I can bring to the program as well. So they not only want to know why you're interested in the program, but also what you can bring to the program to help make it more diverse and more rich with experience. So those are just a few points to kind of like keep in the back of your mind with essays and personal statements for grad school. Like I said, they're very diverse. So you might get a prompt that deals nothing with any of this. But for the most part, these are kind of the general areas that they usually touch on, or areas to consider when starting that essay. And going with the essays, and grad school in general. So a really great resource that RMU has in general is the Center for Student Success, your academic and career coach. So within the center, you can do essay reviews. So if you type up a rough draft for your essay and you want to get a second set of eyes on it to say like, hey, can you just check over this? This is a great place to go. And it's a really good starting point. So you can schedule an appointment, go in and say, I want to go to grad school. Can we talk about some programs that might be helpful? They're able to sit down and go through that with you. And then they're able to review and provide feedback on resumes or CVs. So for a lot of us, sometimes this will be the first time we're writing resumes or creating a CV. So really utilizing them to say like, hey, I would love it if you'd be able to look over these. Can we schedule a time? Because they provide great feedback on that, and they really help you make it a strong resume or CV. And then interview preparation. So sometimes they'll schedule mock interviews with you, so you can kind of walk through what an interview might be like. So they might have you do like, they might prepare questions for you that you could possibly see in an interview. And I think that's a great resource to have because, you know, like I said, with the resumes and stuff, this might be your first time doing an interview of this, like this. So really utilizing that and saying like, okay, this is something that I can do to get myself ready. Let's go for it. And it's that test run that kind of takes away that like unknown of it, because going in an interview, our minds are going, we're like, oh no, what's going to happen? So that really takes that away and allows you to kind of relax and say, okay, this is what it might be like, and these are some of the expectations that I can have. And then, like I said, you're able to schedule an appointment. So I'm going to, So I'm going to send this link into the chat after we're done presenting, so that way you guys have it. And you'll be able to go on and schedule an appointment or anything, or just keep it in your back pocket for whenever you do start to apply. And then a few other resources are your professors. You know, they've gone through this process. They understand. So really utilizing them as well and saying, I kind of want to go to grad school. Do you have time to talk about it? And like I said, that's like whenever you are thinking about it, going in with some of those ideas, like this might be where I want to go, or this might be what I want to focus in. Having those kind of set out before you go in can be really helpful because it allows your professors to say like, okay, this is the general area that you seem to be looking in. Let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. And then also your academic advisor. So sometimes it's with psych too, we kind of have that double dip where our professors could be our academic advisors. But even so, it's still a great resource to have and utilize. And, you know, they care for that success and they want to see you do well. So like I said, really utilizing them and reaching out saying like, this is kind of what I want to do. Can we talk about it? So those are a few of the resources that we have, and like myself and Brianna as well, we've gone through the process. We understand it. So even if you guys want to schedule with us, we can set up a time and kind of walk through that. Or even just the beginning stages, like this might be what I want to do. So that's, you know, utilize all of the resources that we have. So then the application itself. These are some of the general points that you'll see in an application. So you have the program information. That kind of goes back to, like I said, we're going to run with the RMU counseling program. So program-specific information. So RMU, master's programs, counseling psych, and then you would indicate that. They also will ask you some personal information like address, name, things along those lines, getting general demographics of you, and then your work experience. So, and with this, it might look more for academic experience for you. So if you have a practicum that you did, and a lot of all of our psych students have to do a practicum. So putting that on your resume or in that work experience. And then they also, like I mentioned earlier, the GRE. So that's test scores. So like I said, most schools ask for, like graduate schools ask for a GRE, not all of them. So that's just something to kind of be mindful of. You might have to look into doing as well, which I can touch a little more on that as well. The GRE, basically you have to submit it with the application as well. So it's recommended to take it before you need to submit your application. And then it's good for 5 years. Like your scores, it's good for 5 years. So if you decide maybe after your master's, you want to get your doctorate, like it's good for 5 years. So you have that. But like I said, it's something that you need to study for sure. But once you have it, it's good for those 5 years and you can kind of decide what you want to do after that. And if anyone has more questions on that after we kind of finish up, please feel free to ask. It can be confusing. And then the course information. So that looks at your transcripts, like I mentioned. And we'll go over that after this slide, how to request transcripts from RMU. When you're applying for the programs, they will ask for an unofficial transcript, and that's something that you can request through RMU. And basically the unofficial is just like your current standing and like what you've done so far. So they request that you submit that, and then upon being accepted or upon you graduating, they would then ask you to submit an official transcript, which you can receive from the same way that I'll show you later on. And then, like we talked about, the application essay, the additional information. So that really looks at like your CV, your resume, and sometimes they'll ask you to do a personal statement in addition to an application essay. So wherever it says like additional information, those are some of the points that you can kind of see within that. And then again, the program specific information. Sometimes if you, like I've noticed with some of the schools I've applied for in the past, like if you have transfer credits or if you will be coming in with a degree or something, sometimes that information is under the program specific information. So that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, like going through, is that sometimes that information might be within that. So really go through each of those subsections and look over what's needed or what's recommended from it. And then lastly, your recommenders. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll have sections that you can enter in your recommender's email address and phone number and everything. And then they'll send an email out, or you'll need to supply the recommender with a mail address. It kind of just depends on how the school wants those recommendations delivered. So that's kind of a general overview of what you can expect with the application process. Like I said, it can be a lot of information all at once. So kind of going into it with an overall idea of what the program has that you're interested in can help make the application process a lot easier. And then transcripts. So this is for RMU specifically. So whenever you log into your Century account, it'll bring you to this basic page. And where it's red and circled, you would click on your transcripts, and then it would bring you to this page. So as I mentioned earlier, some places will ask for an email or a digital copy, or some places still ask for traditional. So that's like a paper copy. And you can select whichever one you need. And then whenever you select what you want, you enter in the institution name in the search bar. So I went with Robert Morris for this example, and you would see that it's listed. So you would press select then, and then it brings you to this page. So in this example, we did an e-transcript, so that's a digital one. But if it were to be a traditional, so that paper where it says like destination, you would enter in the physical address of the school or whatever's provided. And then you do purpose of the request. There's a whole search bar that you'll have come up, and it would be the continuing education or graduate application. And then you would press continue, and it would take you to the payment options where you can go through and put your payment information in, and then you'll get an email with the confirmation and everything along those lines. So that's like, it's really great that RMU has this because you're able to do either option. So I know we covered a lot of information today, and it's a lot to have thrown at you. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up for the day?
A couple questions.
Yeah, of course.
So first with the GRE, is there a specific time period when they give the exams, or can you just take it whenever?
So the GRE is one of those things that's kind of like rolling, I do believe. There are specific dates that you need to that they have available to take them. But it's not like you can only take them in April or you can only take them in June. So they have dates available throughout the year. So when I applied for my master's program, it was the fall beforehand. and I took it in October and November. So like you can take them whenever, as I think it's up to 3 times. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 3. But you have if you want to take it again after your initial, you have to wait 21 days before you're able to continue on and take it again. So like I said, my application my deadline was December 15th, I think. So I took it in October and November. And then you can select which scores you want to do. And you're able to send them to your school as well. So the GRE, you get your scores right away, and you can select schools or like put in schools that you want to send them to. And that's free. But if down the line you want to resend those codes, they will cost money then. But for right now, the first time you take them and send them, those are free. But the GRE itself does cost money. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you. And another question I have 3 more questions.
Yeah, you're okay. Take your time.
So how many schools do you think is a good number to apply to? Because I don't want to do too much and I don't want to do too little.
Right. So I think that question is really like reflective of what you want to do. So if there are programs that you feel are better suited for you clinically, I know you had mentioned that you're in the clinical program. So if there's a program that fits more with you clinically, it might only be 1 or 2. But if there's other programs that you're like, okay, this is a clinical experience I can get, but there might also be something else that is enticing for you, apply for it. So it's very dependent on what you want to do and what the program can offer you, or what you feel you can get from the program. So I know that wasn't a very direct answer, but it is very reflective on like, do you like the program? Does the program have what you've created as your checklist? So it's very individualized. In the past, when I've applied to programs, I've done about 3 to 4, but it's because I felt really strongly about those programs. So like I said, not a direct answer. It's very person to person.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Then for letter of recommendation, who do you think would be the best people to check for it? Should I do all professors or just 1 or maybe 2, and then do like my boss? What do you think is the best kind of fit for that?
So as I mentioned earlier, most times programs want an academic reference. So usually professors are a safe bet, but if you have some of them are very strict, you can only enter in 3 people. But if for some reason you're able to enter in more, you could do a character reference and have a boss or someone submit something. So that's dependent also on the program. Sometimes they do the hard cutoff at 3, and like you can only enter in that, like those people. But if you do have the availability to have more than that, yeah, I'd say, utilize someone that you feel would be a good fit for that and able to really like highlight you, and provide good information for the program. So more times than not, like I said, they focus more on the academic letters of recommendation and it makes sense because you're, like I said, you're going forward in education and academia. So professors for sure, and if you're able to, for the additional, if you have maybe like your practicum site supervisor, you want them to provide, and if they're willing to, a letter of recommendation, it sure doesn't hurt.
And then my last question is for the interview process. So I'm definitely going to the Center for Student Success for that. So thank you for that information.
Yeah, of course.
But also, what do you think is the most important thing to either kind of have prepared or just to kind of know when going into that interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think this is a very like cliche and generic answer, but honestly, being yourself. Okay. Because while programs do look at, like academics and your experience and everything. They also want to know you as a person. And that's conveyed through the interview process. They get to get a sense of your passions and, if you're really excited about something. So genuinely being yourself and, being confident in what you've done. And, like, say your practicum site, you were one of the lead practicum students and you were able to be involved with a lot of things, like highlighting the things you're really confident in, but also, like I said earlier, identifying areas where you're like, yeah, I could probably work on these a little bit. So really just being yourself, and it's a nervous process. They get it. They've been through it. So it's like it's okay. But at the end of the day, like I said, just being yourself and being confident in what you've done and like who you are. That's one of the things that have helped me the most is like going in and saying like, this is what I've done, this is who I am, and it'll be okay. That's my really biggest like piece of advice for interviews, because it is a scary process. Like I'll be the first to admit that. But it really is like utilizing that interview, like the mock interview and everything. It really does allow you to like have that basic like, okay, I got it. And then kind of going along with that, something else to kind of like keep in mind is like if you do a thesis, utilizing that information too. So it's like there's a lot of things you can touch on, but like I said, really just being yourself and going in with an open mind, and like they might ask you a question that you might not have an answer to, and that's okay. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. It was a very long-winded question or answer.
That is all, but I want to thank you so much. This has helped more than you know.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, of course. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email myself or Brianna. My email is psychassistant@rmu.edu. And then Bree's is psychassistant2@rmu.edu. And I can send those in the chat if you'd like.
Okay. Just wrote that down.
There you go. Okay, there's mine. But yeah, so thank you so much for attending today. I really do appreciate it, and I'm so glad you were able to get something from this. And like I said, if you have any following questions or things that you want to run over, feel free to reach out to us. And I hope it was as helpful as it could be.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much.
Of course. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks.